Season 1 of the save started with me unemployed and looking for a job, which I found in the form of Lima United in the 3rd Division in Northern Ireland. I began with signing a few free agents, including Marito Marcel, I think that's how you say his name, Jack McCourt and Matthew Lynch, who would all be starters within the team. We lined up in a 4-4-2, with my intentions being to try and keep it simple for the players because they all suck. In my first game in charge, we went up against Banbridge Town in the NIFL Cup, where we would secure a 1-0 win. However, following this opening game, we went on to not win for the rest of August, taking a draw against the PSNI and seeing losses against Tobermoor, Dundela, and a 5-1 whopping against Dollingstown. We would finally get our first League 1 against Bangor, but 3 more losses would follow, including another 5-1 beating, this time at the hands of Banbridge. In November, we would find form again, beginning with a 5-0 destruction at Dungannon Reserves in the Irish Intermediate Cup first round, before back-to-back draws against Moyella Park and Lisburn Distillery, before taking wins against Waggarts, Portstewart, and Moyella Park in the Intermediate Cup, League, and Cup respectively, before another heavy loss against Tobermoor would see out the year. Following those results, we would find ourselves second to last in 10th place, and with season expectations being to finish in the top half, it was certain to say things were not looking good. My answer to these issues was the somewhat underwhelming free signing of Ethan Devine from Knockbreda to provide depth at striker, and by some miracle, that seemed to be the solution to the problem, as we went unbeaten for the rest of the season, taking important wins against Dollingston, Newingtown Youth, Banbridge, and Armagh City, amongst others, to find ourselves miraculously finishing 4th, only missing out on promotion due to our woeful goal difference, mainly suffered in the first half of the season. The real key to our amazing success, shockingly, was not the new signing Ethan Devine. However, it was in fact his strike partner, Alex Pomeroy. After an alright start to the season, would get sent off against the PSNI, which he seemed to take personally, and following that, he would explode, carrying us to 4th. He would finish the season with 18 goals and 6 assists in 28 games, leading the squad in goals and only being behind Keelan Brennan in assists. We would end up getting knocked out of all cup competitions against PSNI, Dundela, and Dollingston, but on the whole, expectations would be met due to our recovery in the second half of the season. Despite the strong end of the season at Lima, it would also prove to be our last, because I got bored, as I would apply to a job at Harps, who sat dead last in the Irish First Division, and they must have been desperate because they accepted my offer to come and save them. My best guess is they must have seen how amazingly I turned around the season with Lima, but somehow overlooked the fact that I put Lima in that situation. Nonetheless, I would arrive at Harps to try and save them from relegation, but it would be some task, as looking at their results so far this season would leave a sick feeling in my stomach. I had my first game as coach against Longford Town only a day after my appointment, so I would implement a rather simple variant of the 4-4-2 I had used the previous season, with a few different tweaks in the hope that the players wouldn't be overly confused by the new tactics just a day before the game. The plan would be a success, with us beating Longford 4-2, and following this masterclass in simplicity, I'd keep the tactics for the rest of the season, and to great effect as we took massive victories against Shamrock Rovers and rivals Derry City. We wouldn't lose until almost 2 months in the job at the hands of Bohemian, followed by 2 more defeats against St. Pat's and Treaty United in the Cup. Despite this trio of defeats, we would complete the season with a perfect month, beating Shamrock and Derry again, amongst victories at Dundalk, Shelbourne and Waterford to cap off the season. The season would conclude with us easily surviving relegation and even finishing ahead of rivals Derry despite being level on points. Once again, however, the end of the season would be followed by resignation, as to be perfectly honest, I'm not a big fan of Harps, and I only really took the job because they were so many divisions up. So let's just think of this as a interim spell at the club. Season 3 is where I would actually start to lay down some roots in this save. After leaving Harps in November, I would remain unemployed for half a year until June, when St. Pat's, a club more commonly associated with top half and European spots, found themselves in an identical situation that Harps were in when I took them over last season. That situation was being bottom of the league. With that in mind, they brought me in to work the second half of the season magic that I was seemingly becoming known for. St. Pat's were not in great shape, only taking 16 points out of a possible 54, and it wouldn't get better straight away as we would lose our first game against Sligo Rovers 1-0. Following that, however, we would get a huge result against league leaders and rival Shamrock Rovers with a resounding 3-2 victory before the transfer window would open. We would be busy in the market, bringing in a total of 9 players in the summer, with the most notable being Edwin Anderson from Chelsea's academy, Edwin Abaje from Ipswich's academy, Joel Idaho of Arsenal's academy, Martin Severtsky from Man United's academy, and Justin Hubner from the Wolves academy. Following making these signings, we wouldn't lose a game for the rest of the campaign, with wins against Shamrock, Dundalk, and former club Harps being the notable results, but the best of the lot came against Dundalk for the second time when we smashed them 7-3 on the final day of the season. We would end up finishing 4th and securing European football for the next season. Speaking of European football, we had that this season as well in the form of the Conference League playoffs. We would perform well, with our most notable victory being seeing off Malmo over 2 legs. In the 4th round, however, we would come up against Belgium side Standard Liège, and they would prove too much for us, beating us home and away in a tie. The season would once again see no silverware, with the FAI Cup not providing it either, with a sore loss to Shamrock putting us out in the semi-finals. In a twist, however, I would actually stay at St. Pat's after the first season instead of getting bored and switching teams, which is really a trophy in itself, so that must count for something. Season 4 of the Journeyman Save will be my second season at a club in the Save, and after not losing a league match since my first game, I was confident in our ability to push for the title this season. We would however see a lot of exits from the club, with star players Matty Smith and Dara Leahy both leaving, along with both of our goalkeepers Alessio Abibi and Josh Keeley, who actually ended up going to Everton. The transfers would give us 675k, which for the Irish division made us look like Newcastle. With all this money coming in, I was ready to make some huge marquee signings. Absolutely massive names were ready to join the club, but instead I spent absolutely nothing and brought in a bunch of free signings, with key names being Salah from Arsenal's academy, Sammy from Chelsea's academy, both of which I avoided saying their full names because I can't say them, Lopata, Oscar Bob and Oscar Terenzi from Man City's academy, with all of these free transfers becoming starters, while Matteo Miaja and Noam Amarin from Man United would become squad players. We were beginning to assemble a core of players who had been released from top Premier League sides due to effectively being told they weren't good enough for the top level, so I decided to build the club's philosophy around players who were rejected from big clubs who now band together and beat the big clubs with pure soul. This would end up getting screamed numerous times during team talks. Sit down! Nobody talk! Sit down! We went into the new season with a fresh squad of young players keen to impress. We started the season relatively positively, try saying that 5 times fast, taking a 1-1 draw against consecutive title holders Bohemian before dispatching Dundalk, Everton and Galway, not the real Everton. Then however there would be a betting period for the new squad, with March being a very difficult month for the team, with the only positives being advancing to the Leinster Senior Cup semis following beating Dundalk 2-0. Moving into April, our league form would be solid, taking wins away at Derry and Shamrock along with beating Dundalk again. Unfortunately though, our run would be ended by Sligo Rovers with a 1-0 defeat on the road. We would also face embarrassment in the EA Sports Cup, losing to second tier Cabinteely 2-1, which was hastily followed by a throw of the water bottle. We would however reach the Leinster Senior Cup final after beating Shamrock Rovers in extra time, but following a poor run of form, we would then end up losing the final to Bohemian 2-1. Following the loss, the summer transfer window opened, in which big signings such as Nicolaj Muller and Juego Bueno from Arsenal and Wolves respectively were made and slotted right into the starting 11, along with Scott McMahon and Joshua Coyote for extra depth. Domestically, the summer would be very difficult, only winning against Derry and Longford and taking 8 points from a possible 18. This would be largely due to us shifting our focus to the Europa Conference League playoffs. In the first qualifying round, we would go up against FK Leapai, who we would make short work of, beating them 5-0 away from home in the first leg, with Anderson adding 2 more to our tally, making the aggregate score 7-0. Next up we had the Nyska Streda, who would provide us with more of a challenge as they would get a draw at our home ground, with the game finishing 2-2. The tie would be decided in Slovakia, and the game would remain 0-0 until, in the 86th minute, as Lewis dinked it into Anderson, who took it down before blasting it into the bottom corner, before being played in again by a Muller header and putting it in the very same corner, giving us a 2-0 lead in the dying embers of the game, and making the tie 4-2, putting us into the third round, where we would come up against FC Vaduz, with the first leg being played at home again, but this time we would get a comfortable 3-1 win, with Bone, Salah and Amarin all getting on the score sheet. In the second leg, Vaduz would show they still had some fight in them, getting 2 back, including a very well worked goal, but our class would be too much, with Salah getting another and Muller scoring an absolute beauty to get us comfortably back to where we were last year. The 5-2 loss in the 4th round to Standard Liège was still felt throughout the squad, but this was a very different team to the one that had fell at the final hurdle last season. This time we were up against another Belgian side in Royal Antwerp, and this time we were determined to get through. In the first leg at home, we would have the perfect start, with Bone converting Salah's corner only 8 minutes in, and we would hold on to that lead until the 67th minute, when a cross played across the 6-yard box would take away our advantage, and only 6 minutes later they would strike strike again, with Hongla scoring a stellar goal from just outside the box and giving Antwerp the 2-1 win in the Aviva. Following this defeat, with our qualification in doubt, I needed a plan. On the plane to Belgium, I would inform the players of what we had to do: cross and pray. And the plan would seemingly work, with Agbaje whipping one in off a throw-in to be converted by Anderson, before Oscar Bob would play a perfectly weighted ball into the Swede, giving him his brace and putting us in the lead. The game was far from over though, as Mbenza would smash one past Sammy from the 10-yard mark, levelling the score. But that wouldn't last long, as some lovely link up on the left would see Juego Bueno getting played through and showing all his class, dinking it over De Wolf and restoring our lead. And we weren't finished, as Savertsky would play Bueno through again, who drove a low cross into Oscar Bob to extend our lead. And to cap it all off, we would see some lovely interplay on the right that would lead to Oscar Bob driving into the box and playing it into Joshua Coyote, who channeled his inner Ronaldo, tucking it away with a beautiful back heel. Royal Antwerp would get 2 back, but it would only serve as consolation, as the game would finish 5-3 and giving a 6-5 resolution to the tie in our favour and securing a place in the Europa Conference League group stages. Cycling back to the league, we sat in second place following our poor domestic summer performance, but we would respond with a perfect month in September with big wins at Derry, Dundalk, along with a crucial win at Bohemia. The FAI Cup we also start, in which we started with an absolute demolition of Middleton, before beating out Crumlin, Longford and Drogheda to reach the final. But we'll get to that in a bit. Autumn falling would also see the beginning of the Europa Conference League group stage. Our first game of the Conference League group stage would see us thrown up against Hungarian side Ferencvárosi, who you might recognise from the 2021 Champions League season. The game would finish 0-0, with neither teams taking their chances, with Bone, Mieja and Anderson all failing to convert, and Sammy making some big saves to keep the scores level. Our next game would be against Trabzonspor in Turkey, and it would start poorly, as Kubile would inflict our first conceded goal of the campaign 8 minutes in. We would respond quickly though, with Agbaje showing some fancy footwork before whipping a ball into Mieja's head to level the scores, and we were far from done, as Emran would go on a great run and loft one in for Salah to convert, giving us the lead. Salah would get a second after a stellar ball from Anderson put him through to smash it past the keeper, and our rampage would conclude, with Salah involved again, this time playing it across to Anderson to leave Trabzonspor dead and buried, giving us our first 3 points. Our next 3 points would be secured similarly to the first, this time against a familiar foe in FK Sarajevo. Captain Chris Forrester would open the scoring, converting from 12 yards, but Kaminar would score a lovely goal to level the playing field. In the second half, we would figure out the formula to beat the Bosnian side, with 3 crosses into the box, all ending up in the back of the net and securing another one. Our next game would be a repeat of the last, against Sarajevo again. Our play in the first half, to put it simply, was beautifully fluid. And bar a Sammy mistake on the free kick, the half would be perfect, ending 4-1. Sarajevo weren't done though, and they would get 2 back, but it wasn't enough, and we would beat them home and away. Our next game against Ferencvárosi in Hungary would be slightly less stale than the first, with a Coyote goal disallowed for offside and a Salah red card, but once again neither side would have enough to win the game. Following the draw, we would sit top of the group with a game to go, and as fate would have it, our final game would be against Trabzonspor, who were a point behind us in second place. With both teams already qualified, it would be a fight for the top spot at the Aviva, and Alfie Lewis stepped up in Gerrard fashion from the midfield, firing a stunning effort in to secure our place as unbeaten group winners and giving us an unprecedented place in the knockout stages. The last month of the season would see us take 13 points from a possible 19, which would be enough to secure our first league title of the save. Soon after, we'd have our chance to seal our first cup win against rival Shamrock Rovers in the FAI Cup final, which we would do with a monumental 4-0 win with goals from vice-captain Sam Bone, captain Chris Forrester, Matteo Mieja and Noah Memorand, who managed to get a start. Following this win, we would secure more silverware against Linfield in the Irish Champions Cup final, where we would destroy them 7-1 on aggregate and sealing a treble to complete the season on a high note. Just before the end of the year, we would also find out who we would be facing in the Europa Conference League second knockout round, and it would be Roma, but we'll get to that next season.